Guys, stop using Zillow. It is not helping you PCS. For most service members PCSing to Peterson, they end up picking the wrong neighborhood. Not because they didn't do the research, but they ended up using resources like Zillow or maybe like Facebook, and it didn't give them the entire picture. And don't get me wrong, for smaller bases like maybe Minot or Holloman, you could probably get away with it there. And I have PCSed multiple times, and I've worked with a lot of military families in Colorado Springs, so I want to show you the exact areas that work perfectly for Peterson families. All right, so today I'm giving you my 4 recommended areas, ranked from the closest to base to the most underrated, along with some real commute talks, housing costs, HOAs that some people just want to avoid, and then we'll look at the investment angle on areas that I really think some military members should consider. And don't bail on me after the first one. The last area I cover is the most financially overlooked opportunity that most people actually do not expect. So let's get into it. First, my top pick for Peterson is Cimarron Hills. And the reason comes down to this: the location. Peterson Space Force Base sits in the south corner of the city, right next to Colorado Springs International Airport. And Cimarron Hills is basically its next door neighbor. So just depending on how far you are in the northern part of the neighborhood, your commute to the gate is most likely going to be under 15 minutes. So when I was looking for homes when I PCSed, I always made sure that my drive was under 15 minutes. So if I was PCSing to Peterson, this would be my top choice for off-base housing. And pro tip, guys, most people default to Powers to get there, but in my opinion, there are some really good alternatives. So I would look at Mark Shuffle or Peterson Road, which can totally be lifesavers just depending on how bad the morning traffic is going to be. I honestly would probably just take Peterson Road just to avoid the typical Powers corridor congestion. And another word of caution, even with the new construction and the bridge improvements the city is trying to make to the Powers and Airport Road interchange area, there is still a lot of merging traffic at the west gate, which can cause a lot of backup in the morning. Now, Cimarron Hills offers a huge range of inventory. So you got character builds from the 70s and the 80s, but a massive portion of these homes are actually built in the early 2000s. In my opinion, this area is just one of those rare areas where you can just kind of pick your house based on the decade and your budget. The biggest perk of living in this area is you are literally attached to the Powers corridor, which is going to give you immediate access to the most convenient stretch in Colorado Springs. I'm talking dining and shopping. But full disclosure, guys, the biggest perk is also one of the biggest downsides. So the Powers corridor is one of the busiest throughways in the city. So you're just trading that ultra short commute for a lot of local congestion. And you're just gonna have to be okay with living with that Powers corridor hustle every weekend. So who is the perfect fit for Cimarron Hills? In my opinion, any military member who wants to be as close to Peterson as physically possible, while also having front door access to any sort of major big box store and all your daily amenities, this is going to be a perfect fit for you. But if you want something a little bit newer, and I'm talking brand new, and you're okay with just a slightly longer commute, in my opinion, this next area has all the master plan community feels with just my least favorite cost. So up next is the Northern Powers corridor. So I'm talking Cordera, Wolf Ranch, Ridgeview, and Stetson Hills. If you are looking for some new builds or a home that feels just really fresh, this spot is going to be perfect. So Cordera sits furthest north in this cluster. So you're looking at a 20 to 30 minute commute to Peterson. These communities are just designed to have all sorts of convenience, and they're just going to be really clean and just have that newish suburban kind of feel. The biggest trade-off for these areas, and really just any of the newer areas in Colorado Springs, is going to be the HOAs. So in 2026, the master HOA in Ridgeview is around $55 a quarter, while Cordera can run anywhere around $100 a month because it does include like the community center and trash services. So before you commit to any of like these newer areas, just make sure you check the bylaws carefully, especially for like those military members who are hoping to turn their like house into a rental after they PCS. And then just kind of on top of that, being in an HOA community actually protects your resale value for like long term by keeping that neighborhood just looking sharp overall. Upside for these newer neighborhoods is that the homes are generally more energy efficient and are gonna have like less maintenance. So if you're a service member looking to avoid any of those like major like weekend repair projects, most of these builds are going to come with some like smart home features and some like high like efficiency appliances just right out the gate. So overall though, would I recommend this area for? I would recommend it for any military member who wants more of like a move-in ready home in a master planned community and is just like okay with like a longer commute and HOA dues in exchange for just not having to do a single repair on their home from day one. Now, if HOAs totally stress you out and you just want to have more freedom and flexibility while also being able to stretch your BAH dollar as far as physically possible, this next neighborhood has like a dual-based location advantage that most service members are going to totally overlook when they're PCS house hunting. Security-Widefield is that sweet spot between Fort Carson and Peterson Space Force Base. So that is a massive deal because there is always a high demand for military renters and buyers in this area. So if you ever just want to PCS again and want to keep the property, you really shouldn't struggle with finding a tenant here. And the best part is that investment advantage comes with a price point that actually makes it achievable. This is an area you just need to be looking at if you're like an E5 or just a first-time home buyer looking to purchase in Colorado Springs. The distance to Peterson runs at about 15 to 25 minutes depending on where you land in the neighborhood. So it can actually be a much shorter commute in comparison to some of the like northern neighborhoods we covered earlier. But real talk guys, like the downside is that this is a much older part of town. So most homes here were built in like the 1960s and the 1990s. So you might find like some newer pockets here and there, but they are going to come at like a higher price tag. So if you're sticking to like that staff sergeant budget, just be prepared to buy an older home that just might need a little bit more cosmetic love. So who is Security-Widefield perfect for? It's perfect for like the budget conscious military member or just maybe like a savvy investor. You're going to be in a decent sized house at a lower price point than like the Powers Corridor area, as long as you just don't mind getting a home with a bit more history. All right, guys, so we've got one more area, and this one is for like a specific type of person. If you kind of feel like the suburbs kind of like a trap for you and you just actually want to experience Colorado Springs and not just like live next to it, this is going to be a really good spot for you. So my final recommendation is going to be like Eastern Colorado Springs, which in my opinion is kind of more central, but it's going to include areas like Palmer Park, Wasson, and like Austin Estates. Commute time from this area is going to run about like 15 to 20 minutes, just depending on which neighborhood you decide to land in. What I love about this area is its like overall central location. You have better access to everything that Colorado Springs has to offer. So if you're into hiking, you're just a really short drive to like Garden of the Gods, Red Rock Canyon, and just like the massive Palmer Park trail system. The downside to this area is going to mirror Security-Widefield. These areas are just like an older part of the town. So you'll have like homes with more characters, some of like the newer builds, but again, they're just gonna be older homes. But in my opinion, the biggest trade-off is you typically get to avoid like HOAs entirely. You'll never have that like cookie cutter feel you'll have with like some of the East neighborhoods. And then of course, like one of the biggest perks of being like more central is that you're gonna be closer to I-25. So it's just gonna be a lot easier to get access to like other parts of the city, such as like the downtown area to like go out for a nice dinner, or maybe like driving up north to go to like Denver. So in the end, who is Eastern Colorado Springs perfect for? In my opinion, it's perfect for any of like active military couple or just an individual who just wants to experience the real Colorado Springs lifestyle, because you're just gonna be minutes away from the best trails, some of the local breweries, and the downtown area without feeling stuck in like that suburban kind of lifestyle. So here's the real question before you make any sort of housing decision. Are you looking for a home to live? Or are you looking to buy a home to invest? Because your answer is going to change exactly which one of these areas you should actually target. If you're PCSing to Colorado Springs and are just looking to buy, I do specialize in helping military members make smart housing investments. And just as a former Air Force member, I know the struggle of just purchasing a home from a distance without actually having to be on the ground. I can be your boots on the ground representation to help you find the home that fits your lifestyle and your budget. Just reach out directly. The link is in the description below. And this is the first video in my Peterson series. So just make sure you subscribe and follow along to catch all of my deep dives into each one of these areas, where I'll be talking about like the schools, prices, and the lifestyle amenities to help you start your vivid life here in the Springs. I already have a video up right here where I do a deep dive into Security-Widefield so you can get familiar with one of the most affordable areas in the city. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.